Hello and welcome everyone. Good to see you guys. Welcome on in. Let us know how you're doing today, where you're tuning in from. We are here for day 2 of 2 with Cody. Welcome back, Cody. How you doing?
I am doing fantastic, Sam. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, thanks. Before we get started, let's take a little look at the schedule. We do have more streams coming up after this one, so definitely stay tuned, check those out. After this stream, we have the Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge with Paul Tranny. We have video editing with Vashi after that, and then we have the XD Daily Creative Challenge with Andrea, and Design in the Dark to finish off the day with Andrew Hockrattle and Jen. So definitely check those out. Those are coming up next. Good to see everyone in the chat, by the way. Familiar faces as usual. We got Mia, Noor, Steve. I see Clever in there, Alberto, Jan, Eric, what's going on? Our very own Paco in the chat, Melancholy Megan, Harriet. Yeah, welcome on in, everyone. Great to see you.
Hi, guys.
So like I said, we are here again with Cody. Cody, if anyone wasn't able to catch the stream yesterday or they don't know who you are, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself and maybe a little bit on what we did yesterday and what we're going to be covering today.
Sure. So yeah, guys, my name is Cody. I'm a freelance illustrator, and I draw a lot of kind of children's style illustration. I do a lot of cute little animal characters, and I use a lot of earth tones, as you can see on my Instagram here. A lot of my inspiration comes from kind of woodsy forest, kind of earthy tones. And also I use a lot of vintage aesthetics in my work as well. I also get inspiration from my love of gardening and nature and all that kind of thing. So if you guys want to check out my Instagram, it's at Codi Bear, as well as I'll give a little shout out to my October prompt list that I just recently uploaded. If you guys want to check that out on my Instagram as well, I have a prompt list for fall art that we can do every day in the month of October. So our project today, well, actually our project yesterday, we did a little illustration of a band called the Baritones with our little animal characters that we named on stream yesterday. And today we are going to be doing a little football, vintage football little bear character, just in time for football season to start in America. And you guys, I think Voodoo Val is our mod for today, and she will have the links for our coloring book pages for both of these projects. So if you guys wanted to download that, you can and color it. On each file, I have the sketch as well as an ink layer if you guys just wanted to color it like a regular coloring book.
Yeah, definitely. If anyone wants to join, definitely take advantage of that file. That's really cool. I'd love to see what everyone kind of comes up with. You can post them. I don't know if like maybe the Discord and the other design section would be a great way to share them if anyone wants to.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to check that out after the stream, see if anyone submits what they have. That would be great.
And you can always tag me as well. If you post it on Instagram or Behance or Discord, just tag me at Codi Bear. Alberto says, Bears beats Battlestar Galactica. I love that Office reference.
Very nice.
So we are going to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to lower the opacity of my sketch a little bit. And I think since yesterday we did a light cream background, I was considering doing this one with a darker colored background just so we can have a little bit of a different vibe today. Let's lower the opacity a little bit more. I'm thinking about doing maybe like a caramel colored background.
Okay. How much do you have the color palettes in mind before you begin, and how much is finding it out while you're working?
A lot of it is finding it out while I'm working. I sometimes have an idea of what it might look like, but I usually do a lot of experimenting with lock transparency like we were talking about yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just kind of block in my colors, and then I'll just lock the transparency and try out a bunch of different colors and see what works and what I feel like will stick.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and start with the helmet, since I know that the helmet is going to be brown because it's leather. Because back in the 30s and 40s, this is what a vintage football uniform looked like. If you guys are not familiar with the vintage football helmet, that's why we don't have the little like typical bars in the front that we're used to seeing. They just kind of had a little chin strap and a leather football helmet, and that's it. Pretty crazy.
He's got a lot of like poofy fur, you know, to protect
Yeah,
against impact.
exactly,
So
exactly.
minimal helmet. And
He's
then
got cushion.
Pam asks in the chat, do you have your color somewhere? And yeah, you keep your color palette off to the right.
Yes,
Correct?
this is all of my, these are all of my colors, my typical color palette that I use for all of my artwork. It's just like all of the colors that I've kind of refined over time and that I know that I love for my work. We were talking about a little bit about that yesterday, where I kind of like to use a lot of the same colors for all of my artwork, so it all kind of looks cohesive, going down my Instagram feed and on my portfolio, so everything kind of looks like it's from the same world, or the same environment. So yeah, these are all the same colors that I use for all of my work. And also, for those of you that weren't here yesterday, the brush that I'm using for coloring today is called Conte Crayon, and the sketch brush that I used is called Happy HB, and both of these are from Kyle Webster's Mega Pack. And you can actually get all of these brushes for free. If you have a CC sub, all you have to do is open your brush menu and go to the gear, and then go down to get more brushes, and then it will open your browser, and you'll be able to see all of Kyle Webster's brush packs for you to download.
Yeah, there's I mean, with all the brushes Kyle's made, there's a ton to choose from, ton of different categories.
So many.
So if you guys haven't checked those out, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of different kind of looks to choose from if you know what you're going for, if you just want to play around.
I really love using a lot of his watercolor brushes too, which we may end up using some watercolor brushes today as well.
Mm-hmm.
We will see.
Yeah. I like that effect. Are you thinking maybe for the background or for the actual bear?
I'm not sure. It's kind of, again, it's just kind of like up in the air, kind of just trying to figure it out as I go.
It's an adventure.
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and make a value layer. So I'm going to make a layer over top of everything, and I'm going to fill it with pure black. And then I'm going to go to the blending modes and go down to color. So now we have it in pure black and white. So I'm thinking I need a little bit more contrast with the helmet to the background. So what I'm going to do is turn that layer back off, and I am going to color drop this color again. And then I'm going to just make it a little bit darker and a little bit more saturated. And then I'm going to lock the transparency by going up to here to this checkerboard button right here. And so that now there's a lock on this layer. And sometimes I like to use the hard round to fill, like just because the computer doesn't have to render the texture, so it's a lot faster just to fill a different color. I might actually hue shift this over to red just a little bit.
And Dale in chat is curious, how are you quickly rotating the workload?
Rotating the canvas, it is just R for the keyboard shortcut on the keyboard. And it's on the toolbar. It's right over here on the left side, the little hand with the arrow. And then if you want to get your canvas upright again, you just press escape and then it goes upright.
Also, welcome on in to General Kenobi. General, good to see you.
Good to see you. Honored to have you here.
I feel like there should be some sort of like theme music.
Yeah, right?
General Kenobi enters. But you were saying the lock transparencies you use to kind of find your color palette or the color scheme for your subject. I find that is a really very helpful method to use, because once you have that shape kind of colored in there and you can just swap it out at a moment's notice, you know, take that one layer and just paint over it with like a simple brush stroke and change it. That's a great way to find out different color schemes and try different patterns.
Yeah, absolutely. So you don't have to repaint it every single time you want to figure out your colors. It's really helpful, especially with all this texture, because if I had to repaint it every time, the texture would be different every time.
Yeah.
So if I have the texture that I want it to stay exactly like that. So all I have to do is lock the transparency.
And I remember we were talking a little bit about the difference of putting each color on a different layer versus having one single color layer. The one single color layer being how I work, but I realized, that I don't think that would really work for this method as well because you have those nice textured edges, and with it overlapping, none of that kind of interferes or anything like that. Because for me, I can just kind of fill it with a paint bucket. I don't have any texture,
Mm-hmm.
but that way you do it maintains that nice kind of textured finish you get with each one.
Sure. Yeah, and that's also kind of part of the reason why I do each color on a separate layer, because I'm able to like if I did all of the like both of these colors on the same layer, I'd have to be very careful about getting right on that edge there, and just trying to preserve the texture on the edge of the helmet. But being able to put a layer underneath it, I can just go ahead and paint right next to it and not have to worry about it. It's a lot easier, and I don't have to have such a steady hand.
Yeah, it keeps that nice traditional look to it.
Yeah.
Devika in the chat, welcome on in.
Hi guys, welcome.
Jan Eric says, didn't realize you could recolor your brush strokes with the transparency lock and color tab. Thanks for the tip, Cody.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I use transparency lock and clipping masks in probably every single piece that I do. It's really helpful.
Yeah, if anyone does any illustration work and you haven't tried out clipping masks or locking transparencies, it seriously changes everything.
Yeah.
Like my workflow would be nothing without it. It's nice not having to basically color inside the lines every time you want to make a change.
Yeah. So as we try to find a color for this bear, I'm trying to get a brown that's has enough contrast against the hat, but also has enough contrast against the background and isn't too similar. So I have to have different browns. So I was trying to maybe sometimes I do like blonde bears instead of brown bears, just to kind of like change it up so not everything is brown. I might even actually, maybe I could change the background color too. Let's see. Also, you guys, I haven't drawn a number on this uniform on purpose, and I also haven't decided what colors I wanted to do for the uniform. So if you guys have any suggestions in chat, I would love to hear, because I am always so uncertain about my colors. I would love to hear your guys' opinion.
Katie says, do you only do illustrations on Photoshop? Do you ever use Procreate? Do you work on the iPad at all?
I have actually don't own an iPad. I just recently ordered my first one, but it's not going to be here for another few weeks because of delays with COVID for online orders, and everywhere around here was out of stock. So I am really excited to start using the iPad apps. But no, I don't have any experience with it yet, so I'm going to be brand new. But yes, I do all of my work in Photoshop. I've just recently, kind of like last year, started trying to learn traditional gouache paints and also watercolors. I don't personally have much experience with traditional paints. I pretty much went straight from doing like pencil drawings in high school to doing digital art. So I don't have any training or experience with real paints or mixing real paints or anything like that. Mixing colors digitally and traditionally is much different. So it's definitely a learning curve, but I have been enjoying doing some traditional work.
Oh, that's super
To
cool.
get back to that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the texture you can get with that is always, I think, a huge fun part about traditional media.
Oh yeah. Gouache paint is if you guys don't know what gouache paint is, basically it's watercolor, but with pastel in it. So it's like pastel paint and it dries very matte. So you can either use it as an opaque paint, or you can water it down and use it like watercolor. And it has this really beautiful matte texture. If you guys are interested, you could just like Google some gouache paintings or something like that. But yeah, I really love the texture, and I feel like it works well with my artwork. So I definitely want to continue to work on my skill with traditional painting.
So you said you don't really have a background with any other traditional painting?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried like oils or acrylics or anything like that?
I used to do like acrylic crafts when I was a kid with my mom, but other
Oh.
than that, like painting, no, I don't. I've never even touched oils actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not too dissimilar from my whole story too. I was just sketching in a sketchbook for 6 months trying to learn how to draw when I first started, and then I just went straight to digital. And I have played around with oils a little bit here and there, and acrylics, but very briefly. But I pretty much learned to paint completely digitally.
Yeah. Can completely relate to that. So as you guys can see, I'm going to show you guys a little bit of my technique here to kind of save time. So what I could have done, I'm going to make this layer invisible. What I could have done to paint the brown on his arm, I could have just stopped here because right here is where his sleeve starts. But what I'm doing is I'm going to just paint it all in one block. And then I'm going to go back with a clipping mask and paint over top of it where his sleeve is. So it's just all one singular shape. So basically, this is how we're going to do it. So a clipping mask, you guys just got to make a layer over top. And then if you hold Alt and move your mouse in between both of the layers until you see this little drop down arrow, and then click. And so now you have a clipping mask inside of this arm layer. So now you can paint inside that shape without going outside of it on a separate layer. So let's take a random color here for the sake of showing it off. Let's lower the opacity of the arm so we can see the sketch underneath, and then go back up to the clipping mask layer. And now I'm going to paint straight over that, right where that sketch is. So now his arm is sleeved, and it even saves the texture and stuff too. So with the clipping mask, I don't even have to worry about the texture being lost. It's a very bright yellow, but you guys see it.
Yeah, it's great to have those little techniques that kind of just make life easier.
Yeah.
Also, Jan Eric says, is it possible to emulate knife painting in Photoshop? It looks so fun in real life. Like
palette knives.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure there's some kind of brushes, but palette knives like traditionally have such great volume to the paint. Like I've seen some artists like they just glob the paint on, and they have just like these incredible techniques where they just have these giant globs of paint. I'm like, oh my gosh, how are you so proficient with a palette knife? It's incredible.
Yeah, it's cool when you see like paintings done completely in that technique.
Yeah.
I know Bob Ross used the palette knife quite a bit too.
Yeah.
And you get some great texture too, along with that sort of dimension of the paint. But that would actually be a really cool effect to see in Adobe Fresco. I don't think they have a palette knife. I've used the live brushes for the oil painting, and it's really cool. You get that kind of sense of dimension with it. It looks a little bit 3D. But it would be really cool to see like a brush that's specifically the palette knife that, emphasizes that even more.
For sure.
Digital knife painting does not have the ASMR scraping sound, so half the fun is gone. Yeah, there is something to be said, I think, about traditional painting. I said I've done so little of it, but honestly, if I had just like unlimited time, I'd love to, do another oil painting or something. There's something very kind of, I don't know, almost therapeutic about traditional painting. Just
cathartic.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it's just because it's so much more of a physical act that you kind of get something else out of it, but it is a lot of fun. It's also hard to give up some of those digital perks though, like layers and clipping masks.
Undo.
Yeah, absolutely. Undo's a big one for sure.
So I'm gonna go with green for the jersey just for now, just as a kind of a placement color until we figure out what other color we want to use. Just so I can differentiate all of this brown.
This is a good question by Devika. What is your favorite color? Do you have one?
I don't think I would be able to choose a single favorite color, but I definitely prefer just like dark, rich earth tones. I do really love like this camel color, caramel color that we have in the background. I'd say that's definitely one of my favorites. I use it a lot in my work. And also like burnt orange and stuff like that, browns.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite color, Sam?
When you said the burnt oranges, I've always kind of liked that when I see people do underpaintings traditionally. There's something about that I've always thought is cool, but I definitely find myself doing this kind of deep on the darker side teal color a lot. I don't know, something about this sort of blue teal color. I definitely use it a lot, even if it's sparingly. But
Yeah.
I'd probably say that's my favorite color for whatever reason.
I can see that. You do a lot of your characters in that deep teal color.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's actually my husband's favorite color is dark teal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's hard to pick like just a standalone favorite color.
Yeah.
Because I think so much about color in terms of painting, so it's all situational. But just on its own, yeah, that's probably the one. Val says, I started doing digital painting for two reasons. One, I wanted to do art like my favorite video games. Two, I couldn't afford paint. Yeah.
That's another perk of digital is that you don't have to buy art supplies.
Yeah, absolutely. The initial investment can be, a little bit with a tablet, like if
Sure.
you're doing drawing and painting, but the comparison in cost to like canvases and paint and brushes, and it's not even close.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's crazy how much just canvases alone can be. Like some of the bigger ones, I mean, they're like $200 each, just the blank canvas. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's something I've just never really had to deal with. So
yeah,
makes life easy. I think there's just so much about digital that I like. I guess that's why I do it over traditional as much as I love the experience of traditional. But just having like being able to create the same thing in a fraction of the time because you don't have to wait for paint to dry, or you can, create a mask and then fill it in with like one giant brush stroke, or there's just so many time-saving techniques that it's too hard to give up for me, I think.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that I experienced, like I said, when I was first learning gouache or watercolor, is that you kind of have to work in a certain order because you have to let layers of wash and paint dry before you can continue on. Whereas I'm used to kind of just being able to go anywhere I want around my canvas and kind of just like do whatever. Whereas like with traditional, you have to kind of go in a certain order and also wait many hours for your paint to dry.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard people say that you basically have to plan more with traditional art because you have to kind of anticipate what the next step will be. And I think both mediums lend themselves to certain challenges and certain benefits, because I do think that if I had done it traditionally from the get-go, I maybe would have planned and thought through my pieces better. But for so many years, what I would do is essentially just I'd draw some human figure and there'd be no real plan for it. And then I'd throw a costume on them afterwards because I'd be like, well, I got to make it a character. So let's give them an axe and some shoulder pads. And there was a lot of years where I realized like, I need to actually kind of think about what I'm going to create, like something that's worthwhile. Because once you get to that like 10-hour mark and you're like, this isn't even really a cool piece. It was just kind of like a doodle that I spent a long time on. So I think had I done traditional, maybe I would have gotten over that sooner, but they kind of have different challenges to them, I think, different perks.
Yeah, for sure.
But there is something to be said for being able to change it at any time and make drastic changes and kind of do it on the fly. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's something I've definitely seen, like some artists, traditional artists that I follow. I see them having to like plan out their colors. Like they have to do a color mock-ups, like traditional color mock-ups, and they plan their palettes. Like they do extensive planning before they even touch the paint to canvas. I am just not that patient, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. Like I remember seeing Frank Frazetta paintings that's just like a color composition where
Hmm.
he's testing out to see, if that arrangement of colors and values looks good. And that's actually something I've taken into my digital. Like I'll see these things traditional. I'll be like, that's a good point, because you can test it out almost abstractly to see if it even works before you commit to it.
Right.
But yeah, it can be, I mean, when it's traditional, it can be a lot of prep. Pam says, a lot to learn. I need to go back and watch yesterday. Yeah, for sure. The replay is available. And I don't know if you heard in the beginning or if anyone's just joining us, but Codi is providing the line art for this piece. So you can paint along, you can draw and color in the lines. So if you want that, there may be a link in the chat that you can get. But
Yeah,
definitely
for sure.
feel free to. Codi, you said they can tag you on social media.
Yeah, just at
share.
Codi Bear. Yep.
Yeah, or feel free to share in the Photoshop Discord if anyone doesn't have Twitter or Instagram. Are you on Twitter or just Instagram?
I am on Twitter. It's at Codi Bear's Cave. I just don't use it as often anymore. I used to be really active on Twitter, but now I've just kind of really cut back on my social media time in general. So I mostly just focus on Instagram now.
Val says, Frazetta. Yeah, classic. Do you have any artists in particular in terms of like the old masters, or at least, I don't know, an older generation of artists that are kind of a classic look you look at all? Or is it mostly modern artists?
It's mostly modern artists. To be honest with you, I'm actually not super familiar with any of the old masters. Being self-taught and internet taught, I never had any professional training. I didn't go to college or anything like that. So, no traditional training in that sense where I learned about art history or anything like that. So I actually don't have too much knowledge about it. So I mostly just look at modern artists that I just see on social media and get inspiration that way, and inspiration from my own personal hobbies.
Yeah, for sure. I looked up that artist you mentioned yesterday. You mentioned two. One was like Ghost Puff or something, was it? And then the other one was, I think their last name was White.
Tegan White, yeah.
Tegan's White stuff, I followed them. I mean, I followed both of them, but Tegan White stuff has such a cool aesthetic to it.
Incredible, yeah. She has an awesome color palette. She actually does all of her paintings in gouache.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's super cool. Yeah, there's certain artists that I always admire who have really nailed down a look and aesthetic to their work, and that's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Hey, Dorina. Dorina says, I love how vivacious this texture is.
Oh, vivacious. That's a word. That's a vocab word right there. Thank you.
I don't know if your texture has ever been described as vivacious before, but it has today.
It has not before.
Yeah, I think texture to Codi's work is definitely like a defining look to it that's really cool. It always gives it a certain...
Really glad you say that, because for many years that was a big goal of mine, was being able to be successful with texture. So it really actually means a lot to hear you guys say that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think it shows when artists kind of gravitate towards a certain aspect of their work they're really trying to push. So if texture is something that you really like or latch onto, I think that tends to show in someone's work, because it's something they spend a lot of time playing with, experimenting with, thinking about.
Yeah.
It's always nice to have those aspects of your work that are, fairly unique and kind of your own voice.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of getting on the subject of relative color, so this jersey right here, compared to all of the other warm colors, it looks blue. But actually, if we color drop it really quick, just as a fun little fun fact, it's actually pure gray.
Oh, wow.
A lot of the time, when I end up using blue, for me, it just looks a little bit too saturated. So I end up actually going all the way down to pure gray because my colors are so warm. So being able to use pure gray, it actually ends up looking blue, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, that's blowing my mind. Like, I'm pretty familiar with, simultaneous contrast and relative contrast and all that in my work, but it definitely looks blue to me.
Yeah.
I think it just goes to show how warm the palette is right now. I find myself thinking about colors in terms of like not their name or the name that would be, you know, in the tube of paint or whatever it may be, but I always find myself thinking about it in terms of like shifting, like I need to make this cooler, or I need to
Mm-hmm.
make this warmer, or more towards the, you know, this direction basically, because
Yeah.
it's all relative, so it's hard to really pin down like, oh, this is blue, because right now that gray looks blue to me.
Yeah. I do the same exact thing. When I put it down a color and I don't feel like it's right, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hue shift this just over to the red a little bit, or desaturate it a little bit. It's almost there, but yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I'll just plop down a color and then just kind of edit it. And I think of it more in terms of like the color wheel rather than just a singular color.
I wonder if that's different at all for people who, like us, who's pretty much started traditional or digitally versus people who have a traditional background.
Yeah.
Urkamet says, my brain just exploded. That's gray?
That's my husband, CJ.
Oh, nice.
Pumping me up in chat.
It's witchcraft. Dorina says, I've tried to achieve this type of texture. At the end, it always comes out smooth. Do you have any kind of tips?
Yeah, so working with texture takes a lot of self-discipline, at least for me. Like when I even just first started using this crayon brush, we were talking a little bit about this yesterday. It was really hard for me. I had to train myself to allow myself to leave all of these empty spaces, because naturally I kind of just wanted to fill in all of the white. One second, my brush is on clear. I always leave it on clear accidentally. I'm like, why is my brush not working? Okay, so on a new layer. So yeah, so when I first started using this brush, I wanted to use it really big like this. But if you notice, if I use a big brush, then you don't get any texture on the inside. So if you use a smaller brush and have a regular brush, like a really light brush stroke, and then kind of paint in all different directions, you kind of like just naturally get this little cross-hatching kind of technique. And just leaving all of this, like allowing yourself to leave all of this empty space in here will leave that nice texture. And you can also not only just do like the cross hatching, but you can do all different directions. Like sometimes I'll paint in swirls like this, and that gives a different texture. Like if I'm drawing a little pom-pom, sometimes I'll just color it like this and just leave it as an outline. And you got a cool texture right there just from the negative space. So yeah, whatever texture brush you're using, just kind of actively allow yourself to leave that negative space. And eventually it will become second nature. Like now I'm talking to you guys and I've been using this brush for quite a while. So now it's just second nature for me to leave that space. But before I had to actively remind myself to do it, but it will come to you eventually.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And I think you're right. It's something that once you play around with it enough, you kind of find your workflow and your techniques. Yeah. Alternatively, Dorina, I think you could probably make a mask under your entire drawing, under your entire shape there. And then there's some brushes that I've used that if you have this mask, you can essentially create a really large brush size and just do these big brush strokes and swatches down to get the areas you want. You could mask off each different section of color if you'd like. But if you do these big like light brush strokes or some brushes, even if you color over it repeatedly, it like keeps that texture. I'm not sure what setting that is exactly, but that's definitely a technique I think that could work too if you're trying to keep a very noticeable texture.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of ways to approach it in Photoshop. I've seen a lot of different workflows. So some things you could try playing around with.
Yeah, pretty much everything. That's why Photoshop is so incredible, because pretty much everything, every different technique usually has 5 or 6 different ways to achieve that. There's no one right way to do something. Just everyone just kind of has their own workflow that they fall into, and just it feels comfortable for them. So like, yeah, like if what my technique doesn't really work for you, try Sam's technique and see if that works for you and it just feels natural for you.
Yeah, and even people with like a similar style or look, a lot of times you'll see very different workflows with it. So I think that's what's great about watching streams like this, or just seeing how other people approach it when they post their process online, is you can kind of pick up little things and be like, oh, I didn't really think about approaching that way, but I should try that. And I think that's how you kind of find those things that stick eventually, because you find little good tips here and there, you try them, and then they make sense and they stick with you.
Yeah, for sure.
William says, is there a way to make painting the bear's fur faster, like painting the entire upper body and then making wand selections from the line art to remove the jersey, helmet? Um, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I could have painted the entire image since this is kind of all one singular shape. What I could have done probably would have been faster to paint the entire image in one color and then did clipping masks over top of it and then just painted each individual object. I actually didn't even think of that. That's funny because that's like the technique that I was explaining, but it's like throughout the whole image. So yeah, you're totally right. I could have definitely done that.
Yeah, kind of what we were just saying. There's a lot of different ways to approach it, right?
Yeah.
Pam says, I can smell the crayon.
Very waxy. Childhood memories. Crayola crayons.
Yeah, it's definitely got that kind of playful, almost childlike feel to it, I think, with I mean, I think it's not just the texture, but the way, you stylize everything. It has a very kind of fun, cutesy look. This is a great question by Melancholy Megan. They say, as a traditional artist hoping to enter the world of digital art, does anyone have any tips?
Well, that's kind of difficult for me to say, like I said, because I don't really have much experience with traditional, so I don't know where you're coming from. I'd be curious to see, like, what was your traditional medium? Like, where are you coming from? Are you coming from like colored pencils or like a specific type of paints or maybe just regular pencil sketching? I'd say the biggest hurdle that you might experience is just getting used to using multiple layers and stuff like that. But I've noticed that traditional artists that come into digital usually have kind of a different mindset. And a lot of traditional artists that go digital just end up using a single layer just because that's what they're used to. So I would say if you're new to using a tablet, don't get discouraged because it's a lot different when you're used to drawing on a piece of paper or a canvas. You're used to seeing where your hand is going. If you're going to be drawing on an Intuos like I am without a screen, it's probably going to be a little bit discouraging for you at first just because it takes a little bit of getting used to. But please just continue to try to work at it because it will eventually get through to you. I promise you, it will click eventually. And you'll have that aha moment.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because I think everyone feels really awkward with an Intuos tablet or just the, standard kind of drawing tablets when they first start with it.
Yeah.
There certainly is a learning curve and it feels really weird, and that's not uncommon at all. Pretty much everyone feels that way. So I think, if you stick with it long enough, it becomes a little bit more natural over time. I think my advice for that question would be, when you're learning the software, keep in mind the learning curve for the software is pretty temporary.
Yes.
I mean, learning to like how to draw or perspective or value and color, that stuff, is a lifetime of learning. But the software is really just, handful of weeks or months to really just get the basics at least, and kind of be able to replicate what you typically do. So keep in mind, if you just use the software a little bit each day, it becomes much less overwhelming. And that's a tip I've kind of had to give myself when I'm learning new software nowadays, especially if it's something complex like 3D software. It can become really overwhelming really quick if I expect to do something cool in that software like the first day. So I think once you kind of got the basic tools of the software, I would just recommend maybe doing something that's comfort zone. Like if you usually paint portraits, try to paint a portrait in that software, and try not to throw too many different aspects of something that's new at yourself at once.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one. So basically both of our advice is don't feel discouraged by the learning curve. It will go away eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. William asks, what kind of drawing tablet are you using?
I am using a Wacom Intuos Pro, and this is a medium size. I actually have it sitting in my lap right now because I'm working on a laptop. I usually don't, but I'm in a little awkward position right now. But usually it's a lot more comfortable to have it on the desk, but it works.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's great that you have a laptop that can, do you feel like this can handle everything you work on typically, or does it have trouble with your file sizes at all?
No, actually, this is an MSI gaming laptop. I
Mm.
have an NVIDIA 1060 and an i7 in it. So it's actually pretty powerful. I mean, it's a few years old, but as you can see, I can stream from it. I can do Photoshop, and there's no lag or anything like that. So
That's great.
yeah,
Yeah. It's nice to have that mobility option for sure.
yeah.
Who is the monitor I see now? You are watching Cody right now, working in Photoshop.
Let's see. I'm trying to figure out what color would go nice with this blue-gray color. I'm not really digging this yellow color. So editing like the colors in terms of relative color, back to relative color again. When you're using or when I'm using one of these colored backgrounds, the colors are going to be a lot different than what if I were to use a light cream background, because I have to kind of compensate the color to look nice against the background. So as you can see, like with this white background, I just turned off the cream background. These colors look a lot different against a white background compared to the dark cream background.
Mm-hmm.
Or mocha, or whatever you want to call it.
Oh, also Melancholy Megan, when we were asking what traditional background they come from, they said, I've used graphite and I've played around with ink, alcohol markers, oils, and acrylic. Okay, so pretty
Very
wide
cool.
range. Harriet says, Photoshop was hard for me to learn. I had to go buy a couple of other programs before the learning curve leveled out. Yeah. I think there's probably some good tutorials out there, but I honestly wanted to make some myself that's just like a introduction to Photoshop for digital painting. Cause I feel like as someone who, I remember when I started in Photoshop, it's very overwhelming because it's a very powerful program. There's a lot you can do in it, but honestly, just to like mimic drawing and painting, essentially, you really only need to know a handful of tools in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've been using Photoshop for 10 years, but to be honest, I really only know a tiny niche of tools on Photoshop. Like it does so much more than what I need it for. I actually feel like I really don't know that much about it. I just kind of know how to paint, and that's it.
Yeah, I kind of say the same thing. I'm always hesitant to be like, yeah, I'm really good in Photoshop. It's
Yeah.
like, well, I kind of use the same basket of tools constantly. So with like the daily creative challenges, I'll watch those sometimes, and Jesus or whoever the host is will just say something I've never even heard of, and I'll be like, oh, that's really cool. I had no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah,
So.
I actually learn a lot just watching the Adobe live streams too. Every once in a while, I'll have that aha moment like that, like, oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but it's great. Like, that's the thing. Even with how long we've both been using Photoshop, you still pick things up here and there. So if you just get a few basics down to do what you need to do, you can kind of add these new little bits and pieces that you learn and just add them to your toolboxes, in the months and the years go by. And after enough time goes by, you know quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Dex says, oh, this is for me, I guess. Sam, do you work in any other programs beside Photoshop? Not really. I mean, I do have Fresco on the iPad, so that's kind of my mobile solution. But no, it's mostly Photoshop. I've been trying to learn XD a little bit lately. I've used ZBrush before. I've tried learning like bits and pieces of 3D software, but no, mostly Photoshop for sure. How about you, Cody? Do you work in any other type of softwares?
No, actually, pretty much only Photoshop. For a short time, I was doing YouTube, so I was working with Premiere Pro, doing video editing and stuff like that. But in terms of my artwork, I pretty much only work in Photoshop until I get my iPad. Then I can start working in Fresco.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I've done some Premiere and After Effects in the past. I used to, before I got into art, I actually was playing around with like special effects stuff in After Effects, but same thing for video editing. I've used some of those, but for my drawing and painting, just Photoshop really. Cornell, welcome on in. How you doing? Good to see you.
Hey Cornell, how are you doing?
Ferry says, do you ever add texture to your background?
Um, Actually, just recently when I uploaded my October prompt list, I did a little bit of just a very faint texture. I kind of just did like a little bit of a lighter version of the background and just kind of did like some scribblies, just to kind of add a little bit more interest. But the majority of the time, no, I actually just leave it the solid color. I was considering maybe trying out adding some like paper texture in the background and seeing if that would add to the goal of mine to make it look more traditional. Um, but yeah, usually I just leave it blank.
Yeah, I think it does a nice job of contrasting the texture of your subject.
Let's see here.
I think the dark blue, is that blue? Now I'm questioning everything.
Now you're questioning everything. Yeah. Let's see. Nope. It's pure black. Well, not pure black, but it's pure gray with just a little bit up there. It's just really dark gray.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was a nice. I think that one's working well with this.
Awesome.
I find it can be quite a challenge to come up with a good flat colored palette. If I'm doing like a character that has a lot of leather, or maybe they're like a rogue or something and they're wearing pretty much all black, it becomes a challenge to distinguish things just with value in that way to make sure they still read.
Yeah.
Do you ever have trouble with that?
Like everything is brown, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what I experienced here with the brown fur and the brown leather, the brown football. I think we got some decent values going on here now, but I definitely do experience that because I do draw a lot of bears. So and a lot of my favorite colors are in the brown tones. So sometimes I'll just end up changing the bear's fur to, like I said, like maybe just like a lighter tint brown, or sometimes I'll do blonde bears too. And I'll kind of just play around with all of these different colors in my color palette. Like one time I remember actually on Adobe Live that I did the design off with Voodoo Val. I was doing a cat character, and Sticky in chat, he's another streamer on Behance, he suggested that I make the cat blue, which is something that I wouldn't have thought of. But it ended up working out. I actually think I used this kind of gray blue color. And that's something that I wouldn't have thought of. So just like by having my color palette over here, I can kind of just like try out different colors that I kind of unorthodox colors, just experiment. So sometimes I might just end up making my animals like a random different color that isn't a natural color to kind of compensate for that all those brown tones.
For sure, yeah. Was that the punk cat?
The punk cat, yeah.
I remember that. That was a good one. Yeah, if anyone wants to check out Codi Bear's Instagram, just scroll down a bit and look for the punk cat. That was a great one.
Let's see here. Okay, so I need to draw the knee pad. So I'm probably going to do that brown as well for a leather knee pad. So I'm going to make a new clipping mask over top of the pants layer. Then I'm going to lower the opacity of the pants. Oh, and then I also need to do this little stripe here too. Probably going to do it in this same brown that I did the football and the helmet. Let's try that out. We might need to edit it just a little bit to have some contrast, but we'll see.
And just a heads up, we will be doing design feedback for the daily creative challenges in about 40 minutes or so. So if anyone's not familiar with that, you can join the Daily Creative Challenge Discord, which is the community Discord where you can share all the challenges we do. The daily creative challenges are 2 weeks long with a challenge each day. If you want more info, you can check the tab right above the chat that says challenge there, but we'll be going over that in about 40 minutes.
Awesome. All right, let's bring this opacity back up. Okay, so yeah, this contrast looks fine to me. Just gonna clean this up a little bit here. Let's turn on the value layer. So I'm actually having some difficulty with this value here. I might need to lighten the football just a tad. Having a little bit a little bit too similar of a value there. Let's see. Gonna lock the transparency on that layer. That's a little better.
Do you ever try to separate shapes just via saturation, or do you always try to get some sort of value contrast between them as well?
Kind of both. I kind of like, as I edit the values, I kind of edit the saturation too. So I kind of just play around with it. It's really kind of just circumstantial, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm actually going to, I think I'm gonna throw in the lines on his little shorts here. Little stripes. I think I'm gonna do that the light gray just to test it out. And if we want a little maybe an accent color on the uniform, maybe we can try that out too.
Ferry was wondering in chat, let me see, do you use a basic shape to sketch your bear?
Usually when I start sketching, I actually kind of, here, I'll show you guys. So usually I start with the head, even though I know that's typically not how most artists start. I feel like most artists kind of start with the torso. Is that how you start?
Yeah, I usually start with like the chest torso
The
area.
chest. So usually for me, for some reason, it always works better when I start with the bear. So I kind of usually just do like a loose kind of rounded trapezoid and kind of just like do a little bear head like this. And then smile. And then I'll usually kind of just like do the same-ish shape for the torso and then throw in very rectangular feet here, legs and feet, and then kind of rounded arms. Looks like Marshmallow Man. He's just very, very fluffy here. And that's kind of my rough bear sketch right there.
Well, that's cool because you can definitely see, like, even in that sketch, your style is there, like the big shapes that you're using and everything. Like, I could see how that would develop and, you know, potentially into a finished piece.
Big, round, foofy shapes.
Sam, are you on PC or laptop? I'm on a PC, but this is Codi Bear's screen right now, so you're not seeing any of my screen really. But yeah, I always use a PC myself. Ferry says I always start with the head. Interesting. Harriet starts with the head as well.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
That'd be interesting to hear. What is, if you guys are drawing figures or anything, do you start with the head, the body? Does anyone start with anything other than that? I have drawn the feet first before. That's not very often. But if I'm trying to plant in perspective, like where the feet are on the ground, I'll kind of make the little footprint and then go straight into the rest of the piece, you know?
Sure, that makes sense.
Just as a reference point more than anything. But yeah, 99% of the time it's the torso for me. Reverb Mike says, some days you eat the bears, some days the bear eats you. It's wise words, Reverb Mike. I hopefully not this bear. I feel like this is a friendly bear, but maybe that's what catches people off guard.
Yeah, exactly. They underestimate him on the field.
Oh, look, he wants to play football and then gobbled up. Dorina says the head as well. Interesting. Yeah, it seems like starting with the head's a pretty popular method, which makes sense. And Val says, I actually start with different things most times. Typically, I dive into the part of the character that I'm most eager to illustrate and build from there. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that might actually be part of the reason I often start with the torso, because occasionally I will do the head, but if the pose is the emphasis of the piece, I find that that's best like communicated by their torso, like what they're doing with their center of gravity. But if I'm just kind of drawing a character and I want to focus on like the personality of the character or something like that, I very well may just start with the head.
I think that's a really good point, Val, because I think that's actually why I start with the head, because I just feel really comfortable. I've drawn so many of these animal characters that I feel really comfortable, just like really quickly sketching out those circular shapes and the little face and stuff. And then the body is what I have difficulty with. The posing and stuff is what I struggle with the most. So I'm more comfortable with the head, so I start with the head.
Always start with the lightsaber. It's the most civilized place to start. It's a good point. Yeah, I really like how you pose your characters too, because it's like, I don't know how naturally it comes, but the pose just fits so well stylistically with the look of your work. Like, I think it's really, I don't know, I think poses can be really complex, but like you do a really great job of just simplifying what you want into these graphic shapes that work well.
That's actually not super intentional. That's just how I draw.
I think
I'm
it
glad
works.
that it works though.
Yeah.
That's just like this pose. That's just me struggling with anatomy, to be honest.
I think it works really well. It's like almost kind of a graphic representation of it.
Uh-huh.
The same thing with the piece yesterday, all the poses they were with playing the instruments, they all have like a lot of personality to them.
Yeah, they are right here.
Yeah, love that piece. I miss Colby. Colby's invisible.
Oh yeah, I know. We haven't colored Colby yet.
I was curious, how intentional was your style from when you first began? Like, was your style drastically different? Did you just kind of get led into this area, or were you very much like, this is what I want to shoot for when you first started?
When I was a kid, like from the time I was 6 years old till I was 14, I actually wanted to be a landscape architect. So that is a much drastically different style than I ended up with, obviously.
For sure.
After I graduated high school, I kind of just like, I did one commission for a friend where I drew them as like caricatures. And that was the first kind of piece that I did in my style, I would say, with the dot eyes and the simplistic shapes and stuff. And that was done in Paint Tool Sci. And if I was able to pull that piece up for you guys, I totally would, because you'll see how drastically different my style has been refined over the years, and improved, definitely. That was, I think, back in 2011. So
Oh, wow.
it wasn't intentional that I did this style. It kind of just like fell into kind of the children's book-esque style because it just like came naturally to me.
Mm-hmm. Were there a lot of artists that you were kind of looking at or into back then?
Yeah, back then I was on DeviantArt, as I think a lot of us were. Mm-hmm. And I would definitely study, as I do now, study other people's work and how they work. But as I got older, my tastes just started to be more refined, and I just started getting more into children's book artwork. And so now pretty much all of the artists that I follow are like children's book artists, because that's kind of where I get my most inspiration from. Yeah, and it just kind of has just been refined over the years.
Have you ever posted that piece you were talking about that you did a long time ago?
It is still on my DeviantArt, actually.
Oh.
DeviantArt, I think I'm just Codi Bear on DeviantArt if you guys wanted to search for me, search for my old artwork.
Absolutely. I'm going to make a note of that. I want to see the origin story of Codi Bear. DeviantArt, yeah, it's a classic. I think a lot of us have an old DeviantArt with a lot of old work on it.
Oh yeah, it's like the equivalent of MySpace nowadays, you know.
The artist's MySpace. Yeah. That's funny. It's a pretty apt description.
Trying to get a nice lighter color, kind of like a light golden color for his muzzle here. Has some nice contrast, a little bit lighter.
I think this is a question for you from Dorina. Have you ever done any commissions from DeviantArt?
I did some commissions back in the day, but I haven't used DeviantArt in many years. Nowadays, I get all my commissions through my Instagram account.
Have you found Instagram to be a good source for commissions in that way? I've heard kind of things.
Definitely. Like especially last year during Inktober, I got a huge surge in follows and activity on my work. And I just got so many commissions after that. And that's part of the like the main reason why building up a following and engagement on my posts is important to me, not for the fame or the numbers or anything like that, but for the potential exposure and jobs and brand deals that you get from that exposure on Instagram. So that's the main reason why I put so much effort and work into curating my feed on my Instagram, and being able to have so much engagement on each post is to get that exposure. And that's what's more important to me than fame or numbers or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because I mean, networking and social media aren't really like separate entities anymore. They're kind of, very much, there's an overlap between them.
Yeah,
So, if someone finds you on Instagram, maybe they want to hire you for something, or maybe they know someone who is looking for, people, and it kind of expands your network in that way.
definitely.
I think it's the same for live streaming, because I've met a lot of people live streaming who, have later contacted me about work, or putting me in touch with someone who needs some more work that they're also doing. So it's a great way to just kind of put yourself out there and expand your network, meet new people.
For sure. So sometimes I've been sitting here trying to figure out what color I wanted to use for his muzzle, but sometimes I actually end up using a background color for coloring too, and it kind of just blends in. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna use the background color and kind of use that negative space as the colored in color, and then now we're gonna draw in his little face here in a second.
He's about to get cute, everybody.
Yep.
Hold on tight.
Things are getting serious up in here.
Is that kind of a usual last step for you, putting like the details of the face or any of the interior lines in the piece?
Yeah, actually, sometimes again, it's circumstantial. Like, if I'm feeling like I need to add in some of the details as I go, just to kind of help me gauge, um, like just to get an idea of what pieces of the image will look like finished, I'll draw in some of the lines and then continue to do the base colors. But a lot of the time, I'll wait for the lines to be done towards the end. Sometimes I'll do the face first. Again, I'm just kind of like all over the board when it comes to figuring out what I want to start with.
Yeah, just kind of whatever you're feeling at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Just like go with my gut and just kind of, there's no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah. And also, Pam, thank you so much. Very kind words from Pam. Says, what a fun teaching. Thanks, Codi Bear. And Sam, you're an excellent moderator, and that Pam is enjoying watching and learning.
Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
And once again, we do have the link for Codi's line art if anyone wants to kind of color in and work alongside Codi. She did provide I believe the PSD documents to join her.
Yes.
Just a reminder in case anyone's just joining us.
And in those files are either just the regular sketch that if you want to start out with the regular sketch, or you can start out with just like an actual inked layer, like a regular coloring book, if you want to color it that way. So I'm going to do his little eyebrows as the background color as well. So I'm going to bring up the face color. So sometimes what I experience is the texture will sometimes get in my way. So it kind of ruins the silhouette sometimes. So I have to kind of go in and clean things up a little bit. Like for instance, the texture is kind of like a little bit of a tangent here on his eyebrows. So I'm just going to go in and kind of clean that area up around his face so it's not too distracting around the important parts like his eyes and his eyebrows. It's always easier to get rid of the texture rather than having to go back and add it in. So I usually will leave more texture sometimes than I really want, because I can just go back and just kind of color over the little bits that I don't need.
So Codi, I have the real important question. When are we going to be able to buy Codi Bear brand plushies of these characters?
I wish tomorrow.
Because I want like this one, the football themed Codi Bear, and also is it Frederick the Fox?
Yeah, Frederick.
Yeah, and then probably Colby too. I'm gonna get the whole collection.
Absolutely.
We need to make it happen.
Yeah, me and my husband need to start working on that book so we can get published, and then we can get some Frederick plushies.
I just feel
That's
like
the dream.
I feel like I could so easily see these made into something like that. It'd be really cool. Well, we'll build the hype now. Everybody keep an eye out for that book.
Yes.
The eventual plushies as the Codi Bear empire expands.
Okay, so actually, you know what? I just realized that I got some brown accidentally behind his jersey there somehow, so I'm going to clean that up.
Also, Val was wondering, how often do you try to post on social media?
I gain the most engagement when I'm posting on a daily or every other day basis. Like sometimes when I'm on a roll and I'm posting on Instagram that often, I'll get between 60 and 100 followers every day.
Oh, wow. That's pretty
but the caveat to that is, as an artist, it's very difficult to post that often and you will get burnout. So I try to post at least a couple times a week, depending on, like, especially now that I'm streaming, I'm doing a lot more artwork because I'm streaming, because I'm doing it on stream. So I try to post that week's project on Instagram as often as I can, pretty much like a couple times a week, I'd say is pretty much my average.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be tough to keep up with a schedule like that. That's something I've definitely struggled with myself. Especially because a lot of the things I do take so long. Like I'll do really in-depth paintings, but I noticed that Instagram really does seem to like sketches as well, like loose paintings and that kind of stuff. And I think part of that is maybe just because Instagram is such a small screen that people are typically viewing it on. That if you do this crazy rendered illustration, it's not really gonna show super well on that platform.
You'd be surprised what will get people's attention. Sometimes the thing that I spend like 5 minutes on and I post will get the most attention over like a full done illustration. So if you feel like self-conscious about your sketch, I highly suggest posting it, because sometimes you'd be surprised.
Yep, I feel like we've all been there, and it's such a weird thing that it's like I spent 30 minutes on this and it got like 4 times the engagement of this thing that I spent like 3 weeks on.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember this painting I posted. I was considering not even posting it because it was so loose and so silly looking, but like something about the quality I kind of liked. And I remember at the time that was like my highest post, and I was just like, wow, okay. That's it's an interesting lesson learned, I suppose. But I like Instagram for that reason. You can curate it really specifically, or you can just kind of post anything and everything you do to share with people.
I think part of the reason people love sketches so much is that, I mean, everyone just loves seeing artist processes. And I think as artists, like sometimes it can be a little self-conscious to share your process. For me, like my sketches are just so rough sometimes that I feel the need to just like completely clean them up and make them look perfect to be able to post them on social media. But really, in reality, people love being able to see that rough stuff. They love being able to see your process, and I kind of just have to continuously remind myself of that like there's no reason to feel subconscious about it. Like that's just art. Like your artwork pieces usually don't look perfect throughout the whole process. You kind of have to just refine it and just kind of be okay with it not being perfect.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I mean that's true for me as well, because the artists that I really like, sometimes you only see fully finished things from them, and there's like a shroud of mystery around it almost.
Yeah.
Like, how do they do what they do? And then you see the roughs and the sketches, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. Like I can kind of see where they're going with that. Yeah, that's a good point. Welcome in. Cesar says, amazing work, illustration, and greetings from Peru.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, this is a cool question from Cornell. Have you thought about making and printing an art book with your own arts for yourself, or even selling the art book to potential interested people?
I have. I don't really know how to even go about doing something like that. And I would also feel like I would need to compile illustrations that are similar enough to kind of be put into a themed book. Um, because again, that's one of those things where I see artists doing like art books and stuff like that, and I love it. But then I turn around and I'm self-conscious about my own work, so I'm like, oh well, I'm not good enough to do something like that. But I have to stop thinking that way. We all have to stop thinking that way.
Yeah, for sure.
But I've definitely considered it. I just have to kind of like think about all the routes that I would need to go down, and there's a lot that goes into designing a book and publishing a book. So even if I could self-publish it too, but yeah, definitely been a thought in my mind.
Yeah, I think it would actually work really great with your work and your style because there is such a cohesive look. We were talking about, your Instagram, how you kind of think through the aesthetic of that yesterday. And I think I could easily see all that stuff thrown into a book. It looks like it kind of comes from the same world, same
Mm-hmm.
feel and everything. So I think that'd work really well.
Thanks.
Oh, welcome in, Eldon. We got a new viewer here from Arizona. Retired in New Zealand now. Really enjoying the painting, they say.
Wow, thank you. So now, as you can see, I'm kind of just like slowly starting to add in all of these little detail lines, kind of just lowering the opacity of each little block of color and just kind of going over my sketch this way. I'm actually starting to feel again like the texture is getting a little bit in the way, so I'm just going to color over this just so it's not so distracting, so we can see these detail lines a little bit clearer on a solid color. Just kind of making these areas a little bit more solid here where it's needed, and then leaving the rest of it.
Yeah, it's great to see how much little details like the stripes and the knee pad areas and the little the drawstring type thing on the top of the pants. It really makes it come together quickly.
Yeah, I always feel that way. Like the solid colors, sure, they're fine, but I always feel like I definitely like start to feel like it's coming together into a finished piece once I start doing the lines. And that's again why sometimes I'll do some of the lines before I'm done with the solid colors, just so I can start seeing that finished piece if I'm kind of feeling a little unsure about it or something. I'll just start going in and doing those lines sometimes.
Yeah, and I think the way you're approaching this is it's a really good workflow to people who are watching because I think getting all those big shapes down first establishes so much of the piece, like how it looks, the contrast, everything, graphically with the shapes, but also color palette wise with the big sections of color. And then I think once you're pretty comfortable with that, it's much easier to add these smaller details and really make it come to life, but already kind of know that it's looking solid. And I know a lot of people, and I used to do this a lot, get caught up in details real quick. And sometimes it can be really hard to know like how the piece will look in the beginning because you're spending so much time on like the one part of the face. But getting, I think, everything sectioned out like this big to small, I think is a great workflow.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, another way that I really love using the background color too is with outlines. So like for instance with the knee pad, I just went ahead instead of just doing like a lighter or darker color of the knee pad, I just went and did the really bright version, really bright outline with the background color. And I just really love, especially when the outline goes to the edge of the painting, it just blends seamlessly with the background like that. So I'll do that with any of my background colors. Like, for instance, like with this piece, a lot of my outlines will probably end up being the cream color, just to kind of blend that background color in with the piece, and it kind of helps it look a little cohesive too. So it's not just like a random color for the background. Kind of incorporates it into the piece.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I'm gonna take probably like a lighter color for the shoes and kind of do these little detail lines here. Let's lower the opacity of the cleats. Where is that layer? We're layer hunting again. Let's see.
We got a little story time from Val in regards to never knowing what people will like. She said there's an artist you may have heard of, username I Draw Girls. I love his art and idolized him from the beginning of my art journey. I really wanted to catch his attention on social media, so I practiced hard hoping that one day he would like one of my paintings. Fast forward about 8 years and I get a Twitter notification finally that he actually saw my art and liked my post. So I looked at what post he liked, and it was a joke post. I drew some nice legs on a giant big toe and put a cape on it, and that's what he liked. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I think that pretty much sums up what we're talking about.
Yep.
It's always the least expected thing. You never know what people on social media will respond to, absolutely. That's why, just post everything. Post anything and everything and get a good feel for it. Sometimes people just want to see a leg on a big toe with a cape.
Yeah, don't worry about everything being perfect. Okay, so now we got the little shoelaces in. Let's bring that opacity back up. I might actually make one more line here on the bottom to kind of show the sole of the cleat here. There we go.
We got a question from Dorina saying, do you add these details on a separate layer?
Actually, yeah, right now, while I'm streaming, I'm a little distracted, so I'm kind of doing my workflow a little bit differently. But usually when I add these lines, I'll just make I'll label it outline layer above everything, and I'll just do all of the outlines on one single layer.
Mm.
And I'm saving, don't forget to save your work. PSA, everyone, if you're working on anything digitally, don't forget to stretch, save, and hydrate.
Yeah, those are the big three, the trifecta of responsible arting. Oh, awesome. Tylen is in the chat, says, I'm also new to this whole page, 65 years old in Kansas City. This is a great experience. Where do I find yesterday's video? If you scroll down below the screen, you should be able to see the upcoming schedule for today, as well as the previous videos. It's categorized as well, so I believe in maybe Photoshop or Illustration, you should be able to find Codi's first stream.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you being here.
Finally a save. Yeah, it's good to get into that habit of Control S, I think is sometimes even unconscious for me now, which is great because your computer, only has to crash or have something reset or something go wrong so many times before you learn out of fear a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah, I used to be pretty good at doing control save, just like every couple minutes, just naturally doing it. But sometimes when I'm streaming, I just don't think about it because I'm thinking about other things. So recently, I actually accidentally lost about 2 hours of work, even though I have, autosave on. I think I accidentally pressed don't save when they asked me if I wanted to save, and I lost all of that work.
Oh no.
So now my chat regularly reminds me to save my work while I'm streaming.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I kind of do the same thing. If I'm streaming, I don't know if I'm as, conscious about doing it so often. Oh man, I always have to step away from the computer at that point and just take a breather because I'm I can't mentally just redo what I spent 2 hours on right off the bat. I have to have a mourning period for it.
Yeah, I figured it out the next day when I went to stream again, and I was like, where's my file? This is not where I ended up at.
Yeah. It is true that when you redo it, you usually do it in much less time, or at least that's been my experience. But just the thought where I have to pick myself up and be all right, I had this face and this brush stroke just how I liked it. The cheek looked so good, but now I got to redo it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I actually did end up doing a better job the second time around. But still, it's very painful losing work.
Yeah, I think I hear people say that a lot, that the second time actually often turns out better. So
Yeah,
at least if it happens to us again, we'll have that consolation in our head that it's going to be better. It's going to be
exactly.
good. Oh, interesting question by David. Any special file preparation for sending to print? For example, t-shirt, printing silk screen. Do you do much printing?
So I have, well, I had an Etsy store for a short time until my printer died. I opened my store for like a couple weeks and then my printer decided to stop working. So then I had to close my store, which was a bummer. But in terms of file prep, for prints, you want to usually work in 300 DPI, because that is the size that printers work in. I know some artists will work in like 600 DPI and then scale down for printing, to 300. I personally just always do my work in 300. And usually I like all of my files are typically like 8x10 or 8x8. 8x10 is usually like a good size to be able to just um, buy a dimensional frame, like instead of a custom frame at the store. That like 8x10 frames are really easy to find. So I usually work in that size, or I'll work in squares like I'm doing like this, especially for Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
But other than that, I pretty much just do 300 DPI. And then I actually, a lot of the time, will work in RGB and then switch to CMYK. I know some children's illustrators that know that their work is going to be printed will just work in CMYK from the beginning. I personally don't ever see a difference or a lowering in quality of my colors. I know some artists feel that that is the case, so they just work in CMYK from the beginning. But I work in RGB and then switch to CMYK and just work in 300 DPI, and that's about it.
Nice. Yeah, those are some good tips. I think those are always great things to keep in mind, especially DPI being a big deal if you want to print.
Oh, and also, let's see. So if you double tap on your colors up here, it'll bring up your gradient. So you'll see that some of these colors here on the right side are grayed out. So that is basically all of the colors that won't properly print in CMYK. And I'm fairly certain, yeah. So only web colors, if you uncheck this, that will show all of the colors in RGB. But if you check, actually, now it's gone away. Now I don't know how I did it before. Now it's not working. But for some reason, earlier, I had only on my CMYK colors. Dang it, now it's not working.
Yeah, I've seen that before. I've never actually used that, but it's interesting how Photoshop can kind of show you that.
Yeah, for me, I don't actually really use it because all of these colors I know work for CMYK. That's part of the reason why I've chosen these colors, and that's why I keep them on hand, because I know that they work. But yeah, dang it, I wish I wish I knew how to help you guys to figure that out. But I bet you could Google it, and like the CMYK like color picker for Photoshop, I'm sure it will probably come up for you guys.
Yeah, that's a great tool if you're going to be doing a lot of printing. Ashruffle says needs a bit of a darker hat. I believe that layer is actually on a lower opacity right now for the details, right?
Yeah, it is. It's here is the full opacity right now. So it's at a lower opacity just so I can see the sketch underneath. So we can just trace over these sketch details here.
I like RGB because you see true colors. Yeah, I think if you don't do a ton of printing, it's pretty natural process just to stick to RGB.
Yeah.
Santaji said, yeah, the second time it's supposed to be easier and faster, but finding out you didn't save is really soul crushing. Yep, I can definitely relate. I've been there. Also, Joanne, welcome on in. Says, I'm a newbie with Adobe. Glad to have you.
Newbie with Adobe. Welcome to the stream.
Oh, and just a heads up to everyone, in about 6 minutes or so, we will be going over the daily creative challenges. So if you've entered or submitted any of those into the Discord, we'll be checking those out.
Whoa, whoops. I just accidentally opened up Adobe support.
Oh, did you click part of the program?
I do that all the time.
I've done that. Yeah.
Keyboard shortcut. Thanks, Adobe support. I don't need your help right now, but thanks.
Are you sure? Just in case?
Are you sure? Maybe.
Default DPI for print is 300, web is 72. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't need a super high resolution for web. I pretty much always work at 300 DPI. I don't know about you, Cody, but I do. Yeah. I just end up scaling it down when I need a post.
Yeah, exactly. I personally would rather work too big than too small because I can scale it down, but I can't scale it up. So I just always on default work at 300. Even if I don't think that I'm going to print it, there's always that possibility that I could print it. So it's always just best to work on the safe side.
Yeah, that way you don't have to worry about it and you always have the option.
Yeah.
I think as long as your computer can handle it, there's really no reason not to work at a higher file size.
Yeah, exactly.
I like the look of determination on his face with the eyebrows. It changed it. It's like he looks kind of like, yeah, I got this. We're going all the way. Yeah, you were talking earlier about how with the knee pad, you did that kind of circle that connects to the background. I think that along with all the little bits of the background showing through is such a great effect. It kind of does push that sort of traditional look too, I think, where a lot of times people will tone a canvas and some of the canvas will kind of show through in the painting. Just kind of makes everything look really nice and cohesive.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Yeah, it's this paper is actually this canvas is almost like I've seen like tonal paper, like just naturally like kind of like craft paper color, like brown paper. I've seen people will color with like white colored pencil or like light graphite on like dark paper, which I always think looks really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. I'm gonna lower the opacity of his torso here. Let's turn the sketch back on. And let's grab probably going to use the pants color for the outlines. A lot of the time I'll use the opposite colors for the outline as I did for the base. So for instance, I used the jersey color for the outline on the pants. So I'm going to use the pants color for the outline on the jersey. So it's just another way to kind of keep with that very refined color palette and just using that same blue-gray throughout the image. Just kind of helps it look another way to help it look a little bit more cohesive.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great tip for, I think, having a unified look to everything is kind of picking from your own palette that you've decided on.
So we're going to add some I like to add like little seams in clothing a lot of the time. Just like little fabric seams here and there. And sometimes I'll add in little stitching lines too, to kind of give it a little bit more of a rustic look. And just adding in like the jersey collar and stuff like that. Needed a little bit more contrast there against the head, so I'm going to go ahead and just outline it right there. And I'm going to very lightly kind of outline his pads here, his shoulder pads.
Yeah, this is great seeing this all come together with these detail lines. It brings out so much of the kind of interior information.
Mm-hmm. Kind of starts like coming to life a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Seems like really good timing for where we're at too in the stream. It's just about kind of getting to the finish stage, it looks like.
Yeah, we're getting there. Pretty close, actually. And if we have any time left over, if I finish this, we can always just go work on the baritones image as well. So we haven't finished that one yet.
Absolutely.
Go work on Colby a little bit.
Colby's feeling left out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like we got about 1 minute till the challenge feedback.
Awesome. And sometimes I usually will add in just like these little hash marks to kind of add in a different sort of texture to my work. And yeah, we're pretty much done. Just gonna add in some little more detail lines, and that's about it. What number do you think that we should do for the jersey, Sam? I want you to pick
it. That's a hard question.
It is.
I am trying to think either. Let's go with 42.
42?
Do you think that's too blocky to fit in?
No. Actually, I might have to explain. Might have to wait for the number until we do. Until after we do the daily creative challenge.
Yeah, I think that'll be perfect.
I will go ahead and just stop there, and we can work on the number afterwards.
Perfect. All right, yeah, then after the challenges, we can jump back in for a little bit more. Pop that up. All right. All right, so we have the Discord up here. If anyone wants to join the Discord, again, the challenges are above the chat at the top. These are for the daily creative challenges in Photoshop that we do every day. Today, let's see, we got Angie Babe, who is the latest post with this effect. Let me pop up real quick what we got going.
Jesus was doing the DCCs this week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this was challenge number 1. It's Portrait Pizzazz, which is create a pop art inspired portrait using filters. So kind of a pop art look to this with different effects and filters. We got this really kind of grainy textural one for Angie Babe's entry here. Really cool colors on this.
Yeah, I really actually love this one because the contrast of the warm and cool colors is really great. And the texture adds a lot. Like the shadow parts are mostly textured, and there's a nice balance between the highlights being not textured.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of leaves that negative space on his face, so you can still see the important details on his face. So yeah, I really like this one actually.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like the separation of the shadow and that texture wise is very nice. It could be nice to see a little bit more texture in the background on the right side, but then maybe like all the grainy textures just faded out slightly to really bring the character front from the background a little bit more. But that's a really minor thing. I think it's looking really solid with the sort of graphic shapes that you have going on in this.
Yeah.
Oh, we just got one from Ralph who just popped in. Got a portrait from pexels.com, placed it over the smart object from the session. Very nice. This is great.
Yeah, wow, that's beautiful. I really love the sepia tones. Of course, I'm partial to the sepia tones, but I think if anything, I might maybe center that circle in the background more on her head, because that's kind of the focal point of the image. And having the gradient come out from her face would kind of add more, draw more attention to her face. So it would draw our eye more so to her face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that halftone effect with the background is really cool too.
Yeah.
I like the very distinct difference you have in the textures here. You got the background with the halftone. You have this sort of like oil painted effect almost on her, what I assume is kind of a fuzzy sweater. And then the face has more of a kind of clear separation with the values, almost kind of a comic effect. I think sectioning off each section like that works really well stylistically. I love the deep kind of inking too. Gives it a really bold look around the face. Yeah, this is super cool. Great aesthetic to that one. We got more coming in. We got L Watch with some pop culture portraits here.
Oh, wow.
This is interesting. It almost looks like it's kind of like stylized paint strokes on her
Yeah.
face, I think.
Got some nice contrast going on with the skin tone against the dark purple background. It's
Hmm.
very nice. And the kind of dark burgundy rose as well. That's and then like the ink like as like the last one too, the dark inking kind of comic look on the hair looks really cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of a bold graphic contrast with all this. We got this one also by L Watch. This is cool. I really like what she did with the texture here. Yeah, definitely nice highlights on the center, kind of focal point.
I wonder if this original piece, because it looks like this face was actually mirrored. I wonder if that's a filter that they used, or if the image was originally like that, because it looks like the face is mirrored on both sides.
Yeah,
It's kind
with
of
the
a
hair.
yeah, it's kind of a really cool, another cool graphic effect. I like that.
Yeah, definitely kind of yeah, it creates this really heavy design element, I think, with the hair and this sort of pattern on the face. The symmetry is a cool effect. Yeah, very
Really
nice.
dark makeup is nice and contrasty too. I like it.
Yeah, really bold shadows in both of these designs as well. Oh, this, okay, let's see. I think this is just, oh, a different crop. We're getting some right as we're going here, so
Everyone's uploading like, oh, gotta
yeah, this
upload.
is great. I mean, we are pretty like we're the stream right after the daily
That's
creative
true.
challenge, so a lot of people are probably still working on this. So if you you know, if all of you are still working, feel free to submit it really anytime this week. But these are great. Ooh, this is cool. I'm not really sure what that texture is, but it's almost like a kind of traditional. I don't know if that would be like paint or whatever it is. It's got a heavy texture to it, which is
Yeah, it
really
almost
nice.
looks like a paintbrush that was kind of like stippled little tiny brush strokes.
Yeah, and there's almost a sort of like hatching effect across this. I think that, along with the bold outline, gives it a very kind of traditional inked and like painted look, which is really neat.
Yeah.
Colors are really interesting too, like the sort of blue shadow under his face. It could be cool to repeat that maybe, or under the chin. Maybe repeat that somewhere in the shadow of the face, even subtly. Could be kind of a neat effect.
Naturally for me, because I am not into like pop art colors, I naturally would be drawn to maybe making his skin tone a little bit more to the orange side. But that's just because it would kind of make it more a little bit more natural. But if you are
Hmm.
going for the pop art, the nice temperature contrast between this bright red and the blue actually works really well.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's definitely a bold contrast because the face is like the warmest part and everything
Yeah.
else is sort of blue. I think that works nicely. Really cool, Sig. We got Maji. Ooh, this is nice. The halftone effect does a really nice job of unifying the whole thing, and I like this sort of graphic lighting now that we have on the face. It looks very clean. It looks very kind of intentional and controlled, which is very nice.
It's almost like a painted comic book, which is pretty
Hmm.
cool. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it's almost kind of somewhere between like a comic book style and edited photo in like a sort of collage sort of way. Yeah, this looks great. I really like what you did with the halftone and how it's kind of kept off of the shirt, but on the face and background works really nicely. And that, of course, great color contrast between the
Yeah.
subject and the background. Let's see. So we got that was Maji, Sig, Ralph, L Watch, Angie Babe. Great job, everybody. We got Lavana S, who says, I have a problem with the gradient in the background layer. How do I go in and alter the gradient so it shows 3 stripes? Oh, okay. I think trying to take this original background and just control it a little bit more. That's something I do feedback on a lot of these challenges throughout, so I'll take a look a little bit more at how to achieve that specifically after. But overall, I think I really like the style of the shirt here. Very,
Mhm.
very kind of traditional inking look to it, which is neat.
Yeah. If anything, I think as a critique, I think the um I don't know what filter was used here, but the fluidity of the details on his face are kind of a little bit lost in his eyes. I
Hmm.
think if I were to do this myself, I might have made his eyes just a little bit sharper because the eyes on a portrait are really important. It's kind of like the focal point, so you kind of want to leave those features just a little bit sharper, but otherwise I really love the inking detail on his shirt. It looks really great.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I think there's a lot of crispness to the shirt, and
Hmm.
details with the kind of hatch marks. If you could get a bit more of that structure in the face, a little bit more of the descriptive detail with those lines, depending on how you tweak the filter, that could be really nice. And like Codi Bear said, especially around like the eyes to get those sharp edges and everything. But this is really nice. Again, a nice separation of the background with the figure. Very different looks to both of those.
Yeah.
Then we got Mercurial Forte, who says, my cat Shasta, cat hair is a special challenge. Yeah, absolutely. Cat hair. Cat hair can be very tricky, or any hair can be tricky for masking. Let's check these out. So they provided both of them here.
That is a beautiful cat.
Yeah. It's a good looking kitty. Yeah, this is cool. I think you did a pretty good job on the masking. I mean, it's stylized for sure with that filter, but it doesn't look like cut off anywhere or awkward in any way. I think these sharp edges work pretty well because naturally that's kind of what this filter is doing, is sharpening some of those edges. So I think that works quite nicely. Even the whiskers seem to be there.
Yeah, I agreed. Great job with the masking. I honestly, if you hadn't said anything, I wouldn't even have thought that you had difficulty with the masking. So yeah, great job. It looks great. And the kind of blocky, sharp shapes of the hair work with this really graphic style. So yeah, great job.
Yeah, and I think if it was in just a realistic composite more so, it may be easier to tell if there was some issue with the masking, but I always recommend the Refine Edge brush tool for people who are really trying to get those complex edges with hair. But this looks like it turned out really well. I think you nailed it. And the color contrast and, texture contrast between the background and the foreground are excellent as well. Then we got, I read these names a lot of the time, and I just realized I never try saying them out loud. So Diagonally or Diagonale?
Diagonally, I think.
Diagonally. Now
I think that's how you pronounce. I think I don't think it's Leah or Lay. I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Lee.
It's just the word diagonal and then Lee. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cody. I got Cody here to help me with my pronunciations. Says work in progress so far. Any advice on how I can get a color tone effect on the black shirt at all? Okay, interesting. Yeah, it looks like it's kind of got into a graphic shape. I think you could just mask out that graphic shape if you can isolate it, and really you could adjust it with adjustment layers. You could use hue and saturation. You could use level adjustments. You could honestly just kind of choose a blending mode and go over it with a solid color to tint it in a certain way. It really just depends on what you're going for. But I think because you have such a solid graphic shape here, you should be able to mask it off fairly easily.
Yeah. I in this one, I really love the contrast between the stark white background and the black shirt. That looks really nice silhouette. And also the pop of color with red and purple. The red lipstick with the purple hair looks really cool. I like that a lot. Red and purple always look great together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some fantastic contrasts. Like the hair and everything frames the face so nicely with those dark shades, and the way the hair kind of blends into the shirt. I think this just works fantastic from like a graphic point of view. And the use of the halftone on the focal point is really nice too, to kind of differentiate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, fantastic job on that. We got JD up next with a little before and after. So this is the before stock image here. And this is the edit, which is definitely kind of giving it that pop art look with those
definitely
bold colors.
Pop art. Very cool.
Yeah. The green against the sort of reddish tones of the background contrasts very nicely too. I like what you did with the sort of radiating halftone as well. It's really cool seeing how people are using these different filters and halftone effects. But yeah, very nice contrast. Kind of the same thing as the last one too. The hair and the shadow on the side of the face is really like a bold contrast to the really bright face, which I think is a nice touch.
Yeah, that shadow on the side, that really stark, contrasty shadow really frames the face and kind of like draws your eye into the center really nicely.
Mm-hmm. Excellent job, JD. I think we have time for a couple more of these. Let's check out this one here. I like these yellow tones.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I think this is what the previous entry was asking about, kind of this gradation that's very clear separations here. That came out very nicely. Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
works well stylistically for this, that clear separation.
Yeah, it's definitely got that graphic element to it. I actually like kind of really like that the background is saturated more so than the subject here. Like even though the background has more attention than the subject, in a way, I don't know, it just kind of works for this color palette. Looks cool.
Yeah, I think so. I'm kind of looking at the zoomed out version on my other
Yeah, I'm
screen,
like
and
backing
it's
up.
a lot of times that can be overpowering, but I don't know if it's just that the the subject is just more toned down altogether, so it makes a very clear read. But I think it's working for this for sure. Really nicely done. And Sela, this is kind of a different effect here that we haven't
Oh.
seen. Very heavily textured. Yeah, I'm not sure what that effect is, but it's definitely an interesting kind of worn, weathered type of texture. And on the arm here, it almost looks like a sort of hatch mark with pencil or something, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, I think it I could be wrong, but it might be some kind of like pencil texture filter. I really like how it kind of made the shirt look almost like it's made out of jean material or something. Like it's got some really cool textures.
Yeah, yeah, and the background looks like it has a sort of blur on it, so the sharpness of the foreground stands out really nicely.
Mm-hmm.
So does the value. That works nice. Very nice job. All right, I think this will be the last one we check out from ML, and ML's got this more kind of blue, cool tone to it.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's nice.
I like the boldness of that background. I almost feel like the background is definitely brighter, which I think is nice to contrast the face, but I think you could probably even put a little bit of more brightness into the face just to make that contrast more. Even if the face was brightened up, I think you still have the frame of the hair and the shadow around the face to keep that contrast. But even just taking like a levels adjustment, and sometimes what I do is I'll do a levels adjustment, I'll mask it all out, and then I'll use a soft brush just to bring it out right where I want it. And you maybe just around the eyes, the center of the face with a big brush, so it's a nice gradual fade. Could be a nice touch if that's where you want to go with it.
For sure. I actually really agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is looking really good. I like the kind of strong separation in the face with these graphic shapes. I think that works nicely.
Yeah. Very cool. Nice work, you guys.
Yeah, awesome job, everyone. I think this is probably a good place to jump back in, Cody, and whatever we have time for. I think we have around, just under 10 minutes or so, maybe.
All right.
Back to the bear.
So what was the number again? 42?
Yeah, I think 42
Okay.
would be good.
42. All right. Oh, I also need to do the little details on the football. So let me do that really quick before I forget. I have a tendency to sometimes forget little things like that.
Got to have the laces on the football. He'll
Yep.
lose his grip. He's so close to the touchdown, too.
Yeah, we're almost finished. He and us.
It's a metaphor for this stream. And of course, if anyone has any questions for Cody before we wrap up the stream here, definitely put them in chat now, anything you may want to know, and I'll be able to field those to her.
Okay, there we go. And oh boy, what did I do? Where are my... Oh, there we go. I was like, where did all my lines go? I accidentally made it into a clipping mask.
Oh, yeah.
And they disappeared. Okay. Let's save that and let's go ahead and draw in that 42. So in recent time, I'd say probably within the last 8 months or so, I've started handwriting all of the text on my artwork. I used to use fonts, like fonts that I would come across that I really love, but it always felt like it was never like me enough. No matter how much I liked a font, it never felt like it went with my artwork enough. So I was like, hey, why don't I just start handwriting everything? And I feel like every post that I've done, kind of like it really adds that rustic look that I'm looking for. Like when I write words with a crayon brush. And also it's great for branding because no one can replicate my handwriting. So it makes it very unique to me and my artwork. So when people come on my Instagram or my portfolio and they see my handwriting, like they won't ever see anything like that on anyone else's page, but they would see a font. So that's a great tip for any of you guys that are trying to come up with some kind of font that works well with your stuff. If you have decent handwriting, just maybe even try to make your own font too. Make your own font out of your handwriting. I haven't personally done that yet. I just like to handwrite everything, but just try handwriting stuff and see how you like it.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense because like everything in your work here has such a strong hand illustrated feel to it. I think using something really structured like a font, unless you heavily kind of edited it. I always have trouble with that one.
Yep.
Or you warp it or tweak it or texture it somehow. I think it would kind of contrast with the rest of your piece.
For sure. Yeah, I used to, whenever I would use a font, I would actually just trace over it and kind of try to make it look a little bit more rustic with my brushes. But then I was like, well, why even trace it? Why not just handwrite everything? So
yeah,
it
fits really nicely.
Been doing that ever since.
Almost seems like it'd be maybe a little quicker too, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Cutting out that whole phase of tracing over or trying to make that font look right, whereas I'm able to just handwrite everything pretty quickly.
Fairy says, how do you stabilize your hand while drawing and painting?
Well, right now I just have my hand sitting on the tablet in my lap. I don't really do anything special to stabilize my hand. Just over the years, as I've used my Intuos, I feel like my hand has just gotten used to using the tablet. But sometimes I need a little bit of help and I will use the smoothing tool on Photoshop. And that helps me a lot. Like, for instance, if I were to paint Colby the Mouse's tail, I usually like to do like it in one strong stroke instead of kind of just like a slow stroke, because usually it will come out looking better if I do it in one strong stroke. But as you can see, that line is very jumbly. So I'll turn on smoothing for like, I don't know, like 35 or 40%. And that will help smooth out my lines.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the smoothing tool is one of my best friends in Photoshop, and I highly suggest using it if you need just a little bit of help. Like, even you don't even need to put it at 100%. Even if you just put it at like 10%, sometimes that can help just get those little bit of hand jitters out of there.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you've built up a good amount of muscle memory with a lot of your strokes?
Yeah, at this point, definitely. Like I said, as I've really refined my style, especially using this crayon brush over the past year, I've really gotten used to the way that it works. So my hand kind of just like knows how to move in certain ways to get the brush to work well for me. So yeah, it definitely has to do with muscle memory as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's one of those things. I think it was Fairy who asked that question. If you work on things long enough, you kind of get used to making certain strokes or certain shapes. I don't know if you do this, Cody, but I find that kind of doing larger brush strokes from my shoulder, even with a fairly small tablet that I have, helps me get some nice big curves and strokes to it in a pretty natural way.
Definitely. I totally agree. Like drawing with your elbow or drawing with your shoulder. I can't really do that right now because I'm confined in my office chair on my lap. But yeah, that definitely helps as well. Getting those, instead of just drawing with your wrist, drawing like this and big gesture shapes can really help give some smoother lines.
That's also something I like about the Intuos specifically is I have this kind of medium-sized Intuos. It's really not a ton of space, but small shoulder movements will give me these big gestural lines. Like I only have to make fairly minor movements to get these big swoops across my canvas.
Yeah, exactly. I'm using a medium Intuos as well. I actually prefer the medium size to the large size. I feel like personally the large size is just too big. The medium is just like a perfect medium.
Yeah. I always heard people saying that The large is almost too large. The medium is still easy to transport and everything. And that's why that was my first tablet I ever got, was a medium size.
I might, let's see. No, I think, you know what? All right, I think we're done actually. Just about done. Let me go ahead and just make a new layer and sign this guy.
Awesome, perfect timing.
And if you guys have any last minute questions, feel free to ask before we have to head out of here.
Yeah, Codi Bear, for anyone who's just joining, did you want to give a little recap of what you did today?
Oh, sure.
Kind of how you approached it, and of course, let people know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, so today we worked on this little football bear sketch. We started out with, let's see. Oh, we got to get rid of all these lines, but here, let's see. Let's bring this sketch layer up to the top. We started out with this sketch here. And we just kind of went through my coloring process with my crayon brushes and all that. And if you guys, again, would like to download this file and yesterday's file, feel free to do so and color it like a coloring book. There's also this inking layer if you would like to color it that way. And yesterday we colored this little band of animal characters, which I will finish and upload at some point. So look forward to that. And if you guys would like to follow me anywhere, I'm mostly active on Instagram at Codi Bear. And I will mention it again. If you want to check out my October prompt list, I just recently posted it on my Instagram. It's like the second to the first post on my Instagram if you're interested in participating in any kind of like Inktober prompt or Drawtober prompt list. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, Codi, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. And of course, everyone who joined us in chat yesterday or today, thanks so much for hanging out. Definitely check Codi out on Instagram. Give her a follow. Codi, thanks again. And
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thanks,
Have a good
guys.
one.
See you later.